To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Helping you along the way. Helping you to make it through another day. Yeah. Everything you need to know that you never knew, that you need to know. Like our perspective.
Well, hello and good afternoon. Today we are going to cover an interesting opinion piece. And this opinion piece was posted up today, and it is by Jeremy Carl from Newsweek. So we're going to get right into it. It is dealing specifically with the act. It's the actual 117th Congress for the People Act. And I want to dig into this because I want to hear what you guys think about it down below in the comments. And I also want you to, share it out with people because I'm not sure if everybody knows exactly what's inside of this act. Now, this opinion piece, as you will see down below in the comments area, right below there, you'll see the description box, is not the opinion of TLP or Felicia Lockhart, nor is it of any of the subscribers to this channel. This piece is used specifically for education and commentary purposes, and it is not necessarily the opinion of myself or anybody else affiliated with this channel. So the piece that's the most amazing to me is the actual act itself, and it is down below as well inside of the description box. So I'm not sure if you guys know about it, but they've done some revamping. And Jeremy Carl of Newsweek says that the For the People Act is a shameless elite power grab. This is his opinion, and solely his opinion. He goes on to say, in an ideal world, our republic would be one in which every citizen educated themselves about the political issues of the day, and in which every citizen voted. We do not live, however, in the realm of a gauzy theory and ideals, but in the real world of the 21st century American politics. Many voters lack even the most basic political knowledge. 2 years into his vice presidential term, after almost 3 decades as the United States Senator, 41% of American adults in one Pew survey could not name our current seated president when asked who the vice president was. According to another recent survey, only a third could even name the 3 branches of government. Large swaths of the American public, including many voters, are profoundly ignorant of even the basics of the American politics. This is essential to keep in mind as the Democrats push their so-called For the People Act, which attempts to make it possible to vote with little or no effort. But the biggest problem with the act is not that it makes voter tampering much easier to commit and much harder to detect, though these are indeed fatal flaws. Republicans' fraud-based approach to voting rights tactically accepts the Democrats' fundamentally flawed premise and lets them drive the narrative. So one must go deeper and ask, cui bono? In other words, who benefits from these policies? The For the People Act is a smorgasbord of bad liberal ideas, the writer says, most of which the Democrats have pushed for decades, making the election a federal holiday, massively expanding vote by mail, making it harder to clean up voter rolls, restoring voter rights for felons, regularizing ballot harvesting, federal funding, campus vote coordinators, and getting 16 to 17-year-olds to pre-register to vote. It is notable that rather than have a deliberative democracy decided by informed and independent adults, almost every Democratic initiative For the People Act focuses on increasing the electoral power of immature and disengaged dependent voters whose decisions will be disproportionately influenced by the massive cultural and educational media edifice that the elite liberals control. There is no coincidence that Joe Biden dominated the 18 to 24-year-old age group, winning it at 65 to 31, while in an age group just slightly older, 25 to 29, Biden's split was essentially the same as it was with middle-aged voters. One difference is that their mid to late 20s have largely begun to shoulder their own adult responsibilities, and while younger voters, by and large, have not. It is no exaggeration to note that without the votes of millions of college kids and recent graduates, many of those parents are paying their bills and largely managing their adult responsibilities. If not for him and having all of this, Joe Biden would not be president. While the 2020 age gap was particularly large, going back to the Clinton years, the youth vote was consistently more Democratic than the vote of mature adults, often in large margins. Given this, it is no surprise that the majority of the House Democrats supported an amendment to the bill to lower the actual age voting level to 16 years old. A move backed by the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, of course. If most 18-year-olds are hardly independent adults, then virtually all 16-year-olds, no matter how bright, are, are dependent on adults and unable to exercise adult responsibilities, many of which can only be learned by experience. It is no coincidence that we lowered the voting age from 18 to 21 during the Vietnam War, but at that time, it was appropriate. We should not be asking people to make the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of our country without allowing them to have a role in selecting the country's leadership. But even aside from the war itself, the position of the 18-year-old then was vastly different than it is now. You see, in 1972, 1/4 of 18-year-olds were enrolled in college. The overwhelming majority of the rest of them were either in the workforce or at war. The median age of marriage was 23 for men and 21 for women, and 2/3 were in civilian labor workforce, while another 20% were in the armed forces. And even 58% of the women in this age group were in the labor force, while another 33% shouldered responsibilities as an adult as homemakers. And by the age 24, 80% of the women were married and managing adult responsibilities for their own household. On average, young people today are not called upon to contribute to society to anywhere near the same degree. The average age of marriage has risen to 30.30 years old for men and 28.4 years old for women, and the majority of 18-year-olds, even a huge percentage of the 21-year-olds, rely on their parents to pay their bills. To put it bluntly, the average 18-year-old of today in 1970 was an adult. The average 18-year-old in 1970 was an adult with adult responsibilities and an incipient adult awareness of the world around them. The average 18-year-old today is not. Determining our leaders should be the task of independent, responsible adults. The Democrat vision of the electorate of dependence flies in the face of a democratic history. The ancient Greek ideal of voting and democracy was always based on participation and citizenship. Indeed, in classical Athenian democracy, only men who had completed military training were eligible. Those who had unpaid debts to the state or who had otherwise taken advantage of it were ineligible. Extension of the franchise was understood to be part of the duties of a citizen. This was also how founders viewed it. Our founders viewed it. While clearly our situation is not the same as that of classical Athens, the animated principle remains the same. The franchise was a privilege for independent citizens, not those who were in one way or another wards of another person's or debtors to the state. Unfortunately, Republican opposition For the People Act has almost exclusively been short-sighted and tactical rather than long-term and strategic. Stopping voter tampering and is important, of course, but to make it such an empty proceduralism, the heart of our case is a loser's argument. Even if the act did not enable fraud, it would still be terrible policy and a dagger aimed at the heart of our democratic system. But in a world in which I voted, he says, stickers is de rigueur virtue signaling. We lack the intellectual foundations to make this argument. Democrats seem to prefer an electorate that resembles the human wall of E, idolent and almost lobotomized, glued to their screens, as these people are the easiest for the elites to manipulate, he says. Increasing the size of the electorate without care for how invested or informed it is empowers them who are able to control these voters while disempowering average citizens. Contrary to the Democratic and the media narratives, higher turnout only strengthens democratic accountability if it is the product of an engaged and informed electorate. Absent of that, pushing for higher turnout is merely a mechanism of control. Now, here's a quote. Not since Alien Seditions Act has one political party in Congress sought to bend the power of the federal government on partisan lines toward crushing political opposition to the extent that H.R. 1 is not merely a bad idea, it is a scandal, wrote National Review in a staff editorial. All true, but it's worse than that. The Republicans must just defeat For the People Act, but offer a more meaningful version or vision of the electoral participation, one in which voting is universally available but comes with responsibilities and that rejects dangerous notions that a higher turnout makes a better electorate and that democracy is somehow strengthened when we browbeat less informed and less invested people into voting. We should expose the Democrats' obsession with voter turnout instead of voter knowledge and engagement as a cynical elite power grab that it is. By demanding at least a minimal investment of time and effort in exercising the franchise, we are strengthening democracy, not weakening it. The Democrats will be back because they never quit. The defeat of their plans, we must win the argument before we can win the vote. The defeat, the For the People Act. We must not just reject it tactically. We must firmly reject the rotten and corrupt intellectual and moral foundations on which it stands. Jeremy Carl is a senior fellow at Claremont Institute, and the views expressed in this article is the author's alone. This is Felicia Lockhart, and this has been the Lockhart News Brief. To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.